Well, to continue this conversation and look a little bit more broadly at politics, let's bring in our political panel now. We're joined by Liberal MP Jason Falinski and Labor MP Andrew Giles. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
I'll start with you, Mr Falinski, about the death of Prince Philip. How do you reconcile it?
Look, it's obviously very sad, but it is a reminder that for a lot of people, Her Majesty represents, and she is the head of state for Australia, she represents a period, especially post-war, when there was a lot of development that occurred both here and around the world, and that you know, she is closer to the end of her reign than the beginning of it, and her passing will, I think, be a monumental event. It is also, I think, a reminder, as strange as it may be for a lot of people, especially those younger than us, that Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth have been very significant forces in the history of the Crown in terms of modernising it and opening it up for all of their subjects.
And Andrew Giles?
I extend my condolences to the Queen, and I think it's important that we recognise that 70 years in public life is something that's extraordinary and unlikely to be repeated. And that period of marriage is also a very remarkable contribution. Prince Philip obviously touched the lives of many Australians, and I'm sure his passing will be a very sad day for many in the community.
We will continue to reflect on the death of Prince Philip throughout the morning, but we also want to talk about some other stories that have happened this week, and particularly in the vaccination rollout here in Australia. And we heard the news that the government has secured an extra 20 million Pfizer vaccinations. That's obviously in response to the change in advice when it comes to the AstraZeneca, that it's not advised or it's not the preferred vaccine for those under 50. Jason Falinski, when you look at where other countries are at with their vaccination rollout, the UK and the US have vaccinated more than 50% of their population. How is it that Australia is so far down the list? We are getting obviously more Pfizer vaccinations, but that's not coming until the end of the year.
Joe, that's an interesting figure you just quoted then, because I was looking just before we came on air at the World Health Organization, where clearly the people who are leading this race is Israel, with 50% of their population vaccinated. The UK is at 40%, the US is sort of around the mid-30s. They're certainly the standout people in rolling it out. Of course, the difference is that even today, the UK is having confirmed numbers of people with COVID round about the 2,500 mark. So Australia is not sitting on a burning platform. It is allowing us to make adjustments to this rollout as we go along. There have obviously been problems with securing the vaccine, where the European Union, for reasons that they've made reasonably public, have blocked the shipment of 3.1 of the 3.8 million doses that we have ordered. CSL has filled some of that gap, but the ramp up starts now. So I think the point is that we're in a very good position to make adjustments when and as they are needed, and that we'll reach our goal of having, you know, most people vaccinated by the end of the year.
And Andrew, I wonder if you want to weigh in on that, on what we've seen this week as well.
Yeah, look, this is extraordinary. And if there were a vaccine for incompetence, Scott Morrison and his cabinet should be at the front of that queue, because what we've seen here is something quite extraordinary, and a government failing to do its most important job. And the thing is, the Prime Minister said last year that he wanted to under-promise so that he could over-deliver. And that was the first of so many promises that have been broken when it comes to vaccination. And obviously, until vaccination is complete, we won't see the economic recovery and the social recovery that so many Australians who've made such sacrifices in the past year are looking for and expect. We were promised that we would be at the front of the queue. We weren't. We were promised there would be 4 million Australians vaccinated by the end of March. Time and time again, we have seen the government set a goal and not reach it. And these were all predictable consequences. These are issues that we identified last year and experts identified too, that weren't attended to. And everything really comes back to this, doesn't it, Dan and Joanna? Australians have got one question on their mind: when will I be vaccinated? And the government hasn't got an answer for it.
Jason, does the government accept responsibility for the delay in vaccinations?
Joe, to the extent, I wish there was a vaccine for hyperbole. I mean, if Andrew can point to me where anyone from the opposition was predicting that the European Union would block 80% of our orders, then I'd love to see that quote, or where any expert predicted that. I mean, it's absolutely absurd the way the Labor Party's carrying on at a point in time when we've had the world's best outcome in terms of health and economic outcomes, recognised by the IMF, recognised by the World Health Organisation. Listening to the opposition, you would think that we're in the middle of the zombie apocalypse. I mean, the fact of the matter is that you go to places like Canada that have no domestic production. They are in the hands of what other people are handing over to them. This government, this country, had the foresight to actually ensure that we had domestic production. That has stepped into the gap. We will see a ramp up. We will see people, vaccinated by the end of the year, so we can get back to our lives as we knew it before this pandemic. And I'm exasperated at the sort of claims of the Labor Party and the carry-on.
I understand that, Jason, but given obviously the government can't tell the future in terms of what's going to happen with the vaccination rollout, but given the position that we're in now, was it perhaps premature to end schemes like the JobKeeper scheme? And is the government open to doing more for the economic recovery given the delay in the vaccination rollout?
Joe, let's start with where we sit. According to the IMF, we are the world leading economy at the moment. So let's keep that in mind, with 4% growth predicted for the next financial or this calendar year. I mean, that alone is a pretty extraordinary outcome. Secondly, no, JobKeeper needed to come off right now. And what we need to get on with is actually sectorial specific assistance. So, for example, travel agents still need help, airlines will still need help, and there are some forms of accommodation and hospitality need some help. If anyone who's tried to book a holiday in regional New South Wales has found out there aren't a lot of people in regional cities at the moment in Australia that need help in accommodation because they're being overrun with people from cities trying to get out of the cities to have holidays there. So we need to not waste taxpayers' money, not waste scarce resources, and ensure that we are directing our assistance where we can. But your broader point is this is a moment for Australia to seize our opportunities. Never before have we sat so strongly in world economies and amongst world nations, and the capacity for us to set ourselves up for the next few decades in terms of our future have never been brighter, and that's what the government's aiming to do, and that's what this budget will be about.
Andrew, Jason just said that it's absurd the way the Labor Party is carrying on. Is this political posturing?
Not at all. Throughout the pandemic, under Anthony Albanese's leadership, we have sought to be constructive, and from time to time the government listened to us. It was Labor who, of course, put forward the idea of a wage subsidy. But what we have seen throughout is a government that won't take responsibility. And Jason failed to accept that invitation just a minute ago. And he seems frustrated that Australians aren't grateful. Well, Australians have got lots of reasons to be unhappy with the performance of the government. This is a government, Joanna, as you identified a minute ago, that has been incredibly quick to make decisions when it comes to ripping much needed supports away from Australians who need that support to get through this period, but slow to act when it comes to making the decisions that will keep us safe and will enable an economic recovery. We made the case, we made the argument last year when Chris Bowen was the health spokesperson to diversify our vaccine orders, as other governments have done. And we are now paying the price for the failure of this government to do so. And they have been hubristic throughout, when what they needed to be was more focused on doing the most important job the national government had, which is not about hiding behind the states or hiding behind the European Union, which is about ensuring that we get the orders in place and the processes that will enable vaccinations to take place across the entire country as soon as possible.
Jason Falinski, I just want to ask you around trust. There will be some Australians who are hearing for the first time some of these details this morning around the more changes to the vaccine rollout. Can Australians trust the government's vaccine plan?
Well, if they don't listen to the Labor Party and their hyperbole, they know they can, because we've handled this health pandemic, this crisis, better than any other nation in the world. So when, very rare cases of blood clotting, and as you've had medical experts on your program over the last few days point out, these are situations that are even rarer than people who take Panadol and paracetamol. We have made adjustments in that because we have the capacity to do that. I mean, I just listened to Andrew. I mean, all the Labor Party has done throughout this entire crisis is talk about how we can spend more money that we don't have and don't need to spend. Chris Bowen didn't talk about getting diversity in supplies of vaccine. It was this government who did it. It was this government who got CSL to get up and get ready for production. It was this government who've been looking for vaccines from as many different companies as we can. I mean, the fact of the matter is that the vast majority of these vaccines are made in Europe, and there is no way, and you look within the European Union. At the moment, the spat between the UK and the EU over vaccines and how many vaccines are being delivered by different companies. I mean, the fact is that we have handled this crisis better than any other nation in the world. But if you listen to the Labor Party, you would think, as I said before, that the zombie apocalypse is upon us. It's just absurd, and the Labor Party should get on board with some constructive suggestions, and also thanking the Australian people for the sacrifices that they've made and for the extraordinary outcomes that we've had.
Out of time, Jason Falinski and Andrew Giles, appreciate you coming on this morning.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks very much.